Hello and welcome to Dawn Chorus Writes, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction and audiofiction. This is a new lyrical one-shot written by Jheqia, narrated by Dawn, me, hello, and it is called Love Will Find a Way. So I hope you enjoy it. Massive shout out to the artist in the thumbnail, the beautiful stunning art by Nicole at Miracle Edits. So all her information is in the description below. Go and send her love and some support. And yeah, she's a budding new artist, so yeah, go and send lots of love. Send me lots of love by smashing that like button. Go and send Jheqia some love by clicking on her links below. Comment down below what you think of it, and subscribe if you haven't already, because there is so many more stories to come, and you don't want to miss out. So I hope you enjoy. Love Will Find a Way. Adrian, Cat Noir's POV. That day's fencing practice had been a strain. Kagami was on the top of her game and beat him 3 bouts out of 5, leaving him breathless and sore afterwards. He got home just in time to eat dinner, alone as usual, and then crash into bed. Or he would have crashed into bed if it hadn't been for Plag.
"Sorry, kid, but Ladybug wants to see you."
"What? Why didn't you tell me sooner, Plag?"
"When does she want to see me? Where?"
His Kwame rolled his eyes at his eagerness.
1, I don't know. 2, she said it isn't urgent. 3, at midnight. 4, at the Roman temple in the Parc de Bouchemont. Any more questions?
He grinned playfully.
Yeah. How did she tell you all this if you have been in my pocket all day?
Plag crossed his paws and glared at him.
You do realize I create your suit and staff when you transform, right? Ladybug sent the message through a yo-yo and I received it.
If it wasn't urgent, then this might be one of his lady's suggestions to get together. She had been doing that more often lately, and her regular patrols were always rushed through, so they had an excuse to hang out afterwards. She had been very thoughtful lately, bringing him snacks and sweets from Marinette's bakery. He couldn't remember doing so, but he must have told her it was his favourite at some point, because the TS symbol adorned every box she bought. And she had opened up more than he'd ever thought she would, not revealing her identity or giving him hints, but she would talk to him about assignments or a bad day at school. She had been letting him in so that he could see more of her. And as weird as it was addictive. The more he knew, the more he wanted to know. Ladybug was like candy, and he could never be tired of her.
Kid, you're spacing out again,
Plag's voice interrupted.
What? Oh, sorry, Plag. Sure you are, but you have a few hours before you need to get there. And isn't that park all the way across the city from here?
Yeah. I'm gonna take a shower and try and catch up on homework. Then I'll head out. Sound good? 3 hours later, he launched onto the small Roman-inspired temple atop of the cliff overlooking a man-made lake. It was certainly a picturesque spot, with the full moon silvering the fluted columns and the raven hair of his partner.
Good evening, my lady,
he said, bowing at her. Ladybug was sitting on the edge of the faux temple, her back leaning against one of the columns. At the sound of his steps and voice, she turned, and his breath caught in his throat as the moonbeams crossed her face, half silver and half shadow. She was beautiful, and he knew tonight would be one of those nights that left his heart aching for her until dawn. "Why so formal, Sir Cat?" she teased. "Come, sit with me." He entered the rotunda, ambling past the round bench at the centre, and sat next to her. His eyes lit up at the bakery box sitting atop of a pile of pillows.
"You're so good to me, LB."
She smiled wistfully at him and shook her head, A few pastries are hardly enough to pay you back for everything you do for me, Cat Noir. She nudged him with her shoulder, and he grinned as he nudged her back before taking an almond croissant out of the box.
I don't know, LB. I could live on nothing but your beauty and your bounty. Besides, Mariner's dad makes the best pastries in Paris.
He bit into his treat, and pieces of the crust crumbled off onto his suit like snowflakes. He hummed in pleasure. She chuckled. That he does. Then the smile faded into a sad smile. Concerned, he sat the pastry back into its box and grasped her shoulder.
What's wrong, m'lady? Please tell me.
She sniffled and briskly wiped her eyes on her wrist. I didn't ask you here just for goodies, Cat. He tilted his head in confusion.
Not that I mind, but why did you ask me here then?
Ladybug sighed. I need to tell you about something that happened to me last year. It is a problem I thought I'd solve, but now I'm afraid it might happen again, and I can't go through it alone. Not this time. She shivered at some hidden memory, and he wrapped his arm around her.
You can tell me anything, little bug. I hope you know that.
I do, Kitty. She shifted to lean against him with her head resting on his shoulder. He couldn't help the thrill that ran through him at her touch. They had only sat this close once before, that strange day when she called him to Montparis Tower at sunset, and all she would say was, I did it.
I'm here, Ladybug, for whatever you need,
he murmured, rubbing her shoulder in comfort at whatever she was going to confess. You see, it's like this. And there passed the strangest tale he'd ever heard out of a science fiction movie.
How Bunnix had pulled Ladybug out of time to fight a future him in a desolate world under a broken moon. How he had been akumatized and demanded that she give him a Miraculous so that he could return everything back to where it had been when they had loved each other. His eyes widened as she went on to say how he had tried to kill her, had dropped her into a frozen sea that flooded Paris, and she had found herself standing next to Hawkmoth, blackened by the catalysm that had destroyed the city. How he had known her name and threatened to destroy everything. How he had finally shown her, despite his madness, where the Akuma was hidden, and she had to come back to their time to set things right. She finally fell silent, and he gently wiped the tears from her cheeks before pulling her closer. I'm so sorry, my lady. I wish you'd never gone through that. Did you ever find out how it happened?
She shook her head. Not exactly. All I know is that you knew my name, and you said we were in love at one point. But I had no idea how long you were there alone before Bunnix brought me, and you didn't seem quite sane anymore.
Why do you think it might happen again?
She shivered again and leaned into his shoulder. Because I needed to know how I could go from not loving you to loving you so much I would tell you my name. It wasn't a distant future, Cat. That much I do know. I know we've passed the point where it would have happened, but... He turned slightly to look down into her eyes. The worry he saw swimming in her starlit gaze ignited something inside of him, something deep and primal. It was an anger over anyone who would dare to steal her peace, and an intense desire to protect her no matter the cost.
Is that why you started to ease up around me? Started wanting to hang out and opening up more?
He asked. She nodded. But the more we got to know each other,
the more you needed to know. Yeah, I felt the same way.
Soon you were all I could think about, and my special boy didn't seem to matter so much anymore. I can't help how I feel about you, not anymore. Ladybug sighed and rubbed one of her pigtails against his cheek, making him purr at the cool silkiness of her hair. If I could just make sure it wouldn't happen again. If it weren't for Hawkmoth, then we wouldn't even be in this mess. Wouldn't that be perfect?
But heroes wouldn't be needed in a perfect world, my lady, he said, thrilling at her partial confession of love for him. And I, for one, am glad we're needed because it leads me to you.
But I've talked to Bunny's cat. According to her, we've never known peace. Never will know. That's why she's the rabbit holder. Temporal continuity confuses me. He chuckled.
Me too. But what doesn't confuse me is how I feel about you. If we're together, we would never need to face the world alone. It has always been us against the world. It wouldn't have to stop just because we're in love.
They can have the world, she murmured, huddling against him as if for protection. I don't care about the world. Well, I do, but I just don't want to see that future again. I can't lose you like that again, ever. It would break me, Cat.
I won't let that happen, Ladybug. We'll create our own future. You'll never have to face that nightmare again.
You can't promise me that, though, she whimpered. Believe me, Cat. I want this just as much as you do. But I can't.
Look, my lady,
he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers, breathing in her sweetness for courage.
I may not be as brave or strong or smart as you, but I know that a life without you is not worth living for me. You're my other half, Ladybug, and I love you more than anything. Somewhere in my secret heart, I know that love will always find a way past any obstacle, just like we always have. Will you take that chance with me?
She buried her face into his chest, and he pulled her into his lap to hold her closer. But we can lose it all.
You don't know this, but I've already lost it all, little bug. But anywhere I go, I'm home if you're there beside me. You don't know what it means to me. That is what I don't want to lose.
But knowing me leads to you being akumatized. What if that was learning who I am? What if you were angry or disappointed with me? What if I hurt you?
Then we work it out. I can't see you hurting me on purpose, and I can't see me being disappointed just by seeing the few square inches covered by your mask. It will be just like dark turning into day, that's all. The world stays the same, but you can see more clearly. That's all. Somehow we'll come through anything the way that we have come through so far. With your brains, beauty, and good luck, and my charm, dashing good looks, and
bad puns? She looked up at him, one eyebrow raised, daring him to contradict her.
I was going to say witty retorts, but I was taught never to argue with a lady.
He wriggled his eyebrows at her, and her annoyed face broke into a laugh.
Besides, now that I've found out you love me, you'll never get rid of me, Ladybug.
Well, that doesn't stop me from trying to find a way, she quipped back.
Come now, you just admitted you love me. You're giving me whiplash, my lady.
They were silent for a moment, and she leaned against him as she looked out at the city they protected. I was so afraid of falling in love with you, she whispered, her arms wrapping his middle in a tight squeeze. I was afraid of that future I thought, afraid of ruining our partnership, even afraid you might regret saying you were in love with me if you knew who I really am.
Never! Never! He declared staunchly. I love you just the way you are. You deserve nothing less.
I know that now. I realize that loving someone is always the right choice, whether it is platonic, romantic, or even just family. And once I realized I love you, it just kept getting bigger and bigger inside me until it just kind of took over. Cat held her just a bit tighter, warmed by her words. Yeah, a true healthy love is never wrong, and so with both of us loving each other, it never dies. That means there's a perfect world for us, and that is being together. He brushed her bangs back from her forehead and looked into her starry gaze. My perfect world is shining in your eyes. She looked at him with a myriad of emotions flickering in those same eyes, but her jaw jutted with determination. I trust you, Cat. Spots off. He tensed as the red light washed over her, revealing Marinette, cuddled in his lap. His breath caught in his throat, and he lifted her chin so that he could take in her familiar face in this new light. His brain was struggling to keep up. But how? You were multi-mouse. I had to throw you off my trail somehow, didn't I? She said, blushing, just in case you went to my school. Now it was his turn to blush, and he rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. Yeah, about that? She looked up at him, confused, but it shifted to shock and then embarrassment as he dropped his own transformation. Adrian? She fell off his lap and barely caught herself on her elbows. Hey, Marinette. They just stared at each other for a while. Are we sure this isn't a dream or an illusion? He asked, finishing her thought. I was thinking the same thing. She looked more confused than ever. I know why I would think of that, but why would you? He took her hand and kissed it softly, his eyes never leaving hers. Because in my dreams, I always wanted Ladybug to be you. You did? Her voice was barely a whisper. Marinette, Blanc has been hounding me for 2 years about being in love with you, and I would always deny it because I loved Ladybug, but only because I really met her, you, first. Goodness, I thought temporal mechanics were confusing. The point is, this blind kitten of mine needs to get eyes examined. A gravelly voice whined above their heads.
Oh, leave them alone, Plague,
says a much higher, sweeter voice.
They needed this. At least Marinette did. And it's precious.
Oh, please, Sugar Cube. You should have heard Ray Charles over here there moaning over her. Both sides of her. And then doubling back to say he was just a friend. It was enough for me to want to stuff cheese into my ears instead of my mouth.
Adrian groaned. Trust Plague to know how to ruin a special moment. He was a Kwame of destruction after all.
You ain't seen nothing, stinky sock. Your boy has had her tangled up, coming and going almost since day one. You wouldn't believe what the rest of us have had to put up with. And the pictures all over the... That's enough, Tiki,
Marinette said shrilly, blushing darker than Adrian had ever seen her. If you don't mind.
Right. Sorry, Marinette. Come on, Plague.
But I've waited this long. I want to see how they managed to dig themselves out of this hole they made. Out, Tiki! Cut it out!
Both Kwames disappeared, leaving them alone in the embarrassing silence. Who is Ray Charles? Marinette asked shyly, biting her lower lip nervously. What? Oh, yeah, he's a blind pianist. Plague was making a joke at my expense, probably for not seeing what was right in front of me. She giggled, but quickly stilled. One small hand reached out tentatively towards his face, then retreated. He smiled and took her hand and pressed it against his cheek. I'm real enough, my lady. He could feel her hand trembling against him, and her pulse raced in her wrist. What is it, Marinette? What's wrong? That was how you found out my name, she whispered, her eyes wide in fear. I made you that beret for your 5th name's day, and I had to go back and erase my name. I just assumed you had told someone, and it led to me and Cat. She swallowed hard and curled in on herself. No, he said firmly, wrapping her in a tight hug. One thing I do understand about physics is that changing the origin changes the outcome. We have passed when that future happened, and I know now we can protect each other. You think so? I promise I'll do everything I can to make sure it's alright for you, Marinette. I love you. I never thought I'd ever hear you say it, she breathed, staring up at him with wonder. What? You've heard me say I love you before. She turned her head into his shoulder and let out a shuddering breath. Not... Adrian, not to me. His heart seized in his chest. Is it that bad that I'm Cat? I mean, I know I tend to act different behind the mask, but it's still me. Marinette shook her head, wrapping her arms around his waist once more. My special boy was you all along. What? Really? His voice went quite a bit higher than he liked, but his brain was trying to find out what she'd just told him. She has loved me? The real me, all this time? And she learned to love the mask too? Wow. Adrian pulled her against him in a tight embrace, overwhelmed with the emotions that thundered through his chest. Oh, Marinette, I hoped, but we really had each other coming and going, didn't we? It seems so. It's pretty ridiculous when you think about it. No kidding, Plag sneered from somewhere overhead. Plag, be nice, he growled, rubbing his cheek against her hair. Marinette, you've made me so happy. There just aren't any words to say it. She chuckled. Now you know how I feel. Wait, is that why you were always tripping and jumbling your words around me? I just thought you had social anxiety. What? You never noticed that I never did it around anyone else? He blinked at the realization of just how blind he'd been dawned on him. That's it. Plag, schedule me for eye exam first thing tomorrow. About time, Plag grumbled. Tiki shushed him. Shh! Is it okay if we just sit together for a while? She asked softly. There are probably some things we need to work out. There is nothing I would rather do. But what do we need to work out? You mean, aside from how we're going to tell our friends? Alia is going to flip. Nino too. They'll be happy for us though, he murmured. What about your parents? They'll be thrilled. What about your father and Natalie? He sighed. I don't know, but if only they could feel it too. The happiness you give me, the way I feel when I'm with you, then I think they'll understand. As it is... A hand came up to cover her mouth, then she cuddled in closer to him. Oh, I think I understand what you said earlier about having lost everything. Marinette, you've always made me feel so wanted and special. You're all I need, my lady. I love you, Adrian. But I just don't know. What if Hawkmoth akumatized one of us? We would betray the other without meaning to. I don't know what I would do if something happened to you. She shivered and he held her closer. Don't worry, my love. We'll find a way for it to work out. Now that we're together, I can't help but feel we're going to be stronger than ever. We can finally work together to take the fight to Hawkmoth. We now have everything we need to beat him, and once we have, anywhere we go together. He replied, purring softly as she played with his fingers that pressed against her waist. Did you just call me your love? Too soon? No, it's just going to take some getting used to. She chuckled and mused his hair. That and the purring? As long as you're comfortable, he sighed contentedly, 'cause I feel that we're home anywhere if we're there together.
That's the way it's supposed to be, you know,
Tiki said from somewhere in the dome above them.
You are two halves to the same whole. Some call it being split apart, others soulmates or tethered souls, but you balance each other like dark balances light. Night and day may seem separate, but they are really joined by night turning into day.
Stop philosophizing, sugar cube. They're a bit young for Plato.
Plato was young once too, you know,
she huffed. Marinette giggled at their kwamis, and Adrian couldn't help but join in. You're worth it, you know, he murmured, taking one of her hands and kissing her fingers. Somehow, we'll come through this stronger than ever. You'll see. Nothing is going to stop us. Now that we've found each other? No. Now that I've found you. You saw me from the beginning. I'm sorry it took so long. Adrian, how can you be so sure that this isn't a mistake? He tipped her chin up to look at him. I'll prove it to you if you will let me kiss you. Her eyes were wide and shining as she nodded. The touch of her lips sent a coruscating wave of electricity through him, and when she pulled him closer, it was all he had ever wanted. When they broke apart, he smiled. Did that feel right? Her delicate fingers crept to touch the lips he wanted to kiss again. She nodded. A giggle smile spread across her face. Not just here, he said, tapping a finger on her lips, but here. He tapped his chest, and here he placed a soft kiss on her forehead. She looked at him for a long time, considering his words as carefully as she examined the components of her lucky charm. Yes, she said finally, her eyes and voice so warm and full of love that it left him trembling. Then love will find a way. She stretched up and pressed a kiss to his cheek, leaving him blushing. I know. As long as we stick together, love will find a way. Thank you for listening to this beautiful one-shot written by Jheqia. Make sure you go and send her some love. Send me some love by smashing that like button. Comment down below what you think of it. A bit of LadyNoir feels. And subscribe if you haven't already, because there is so many stories to come. You really don't want to miss out. And I will speak to you soon. Bye.